For the commandment is a lamp, and the Torah is a light.
Light is the symbol of Israel's mission. As it is written, I have set you for a covenant of the people and for a light of the nations.
Therefore, in the spirit of our ancient tradition that hallows and unites Israel in all lands and all ages, do we now kindle the Sabbath light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
We praise you, eternal God, ruler of the universe, who hallows us through laws and ethical teachings and commands us to kindle the Sabbath lights.
May God bless us with Sabbath joy. May God bless us with Sabbath holiness. May God bless us with Sabbath peace. Amen.
Thank you very much. So gathered tonight, as we are, as the shadow of evening falls, wherever we are in the world, we open our hearts to the sweet and comforting influences of this day, this Sabbath day, hallowed for your worship. We thank you all for your blessings, for the many gifts of your providence, and for the ceaseless flow of your goodness to us. Every day we receive the fullness of your bounty and your blessing, and by your protection, we have passed safely through the dangers that beset our paths. When we are tried by sorrow and days of challenge and anguish are upon us, it is not that you have forsaken us. Your eye is ever upon us, and your arm still guides us. In your own time, I hope to be able to say, I thank you for have granted me the strength to endure whatever trial may come before me. And now that the ordeal is past, you comfort me, and I draw waters of joy from the wells of salvation. And so we do pray for all peoples who are in this hour in times of tribulation. We name in our hearts those who are dear to us and those who are far away. Let them know your help and grant them a blessed release from their trials. I want to insert a little poem written by Chaim Stern, one of the authors of the American Reformed Prayer Book, about the Torah. The Torah is God's choicest gift to the house of Israel. Israel without Torah is like a body without a soul. Like water, it refreshes and purifies, and like wine, it gladdens the heart. When Torah entered the world, freedom entered the world. The whole Torah exists only to establish peace. Its first and last aim is to teach love and kindness. As in the saying, what is hateful to you, do not do unto others. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and learn it. We turn to the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Praise the eternal God, to whom all praise is due. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Va'ed. Let us praise the eternal God, to whom all praise is due, now and forever. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Praised are you, our God, God of all the world. Asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, who opens with your words the gates of the evening. B'chochma poteach sharim, and with wisdom opens the gates of evening fall. You are our God and parent, the source from whom life and all its blessings flow. Wherever we turn our gaze, we behold signs of your goodness and grace. The fullness of your power is disclosed to us in the guidance of your people, in your constant shaping of human destiny, and in the wondrous words of creation. Your loving spirit is present in all your works, guiding and sustaining them. The harmony of grandeur of nature speak to us of you, of your infinite might and majesty. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Praised are you, O God, who makes the evening fall. We come to the Shema on page 43, also in our songbook number 24. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the eternal is our God, the eternal God is one. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Let us praise God, who rules in glory forever and ever.
And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you on this day shall be upon your heart, shall be upon your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and when you rise up, and you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a symbol before your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house, and upon your gates, and upon your gates, that you may remember and do all of my commandments, and be holy unto your God, unto your God, unto your God.
So we think of the Torah as a document maybe that traditionally was thought to have been handed to Moses by God on Mount Sinai. This is a reading from the liberal Jewish prayer book from the UK, written by Rabbi John Rayner. Sinai was only the beginning. The Torah has never ceased to grow. In every age, it has been refined and enlarged. It has a permanent core and an expanding periphery. It expands as the horizon of human vision grows. Torah is the record of the spiritual journey of the Jewish people and the lessons for life and conduct it has learned on that journey. It is teaching, law, tradition. It is the fruit of reason and the outpouring of spirit in every age. It is interpretation of text and innovation of thought. Torah is the call for righteousness, justice, and equity, viewed as the divine will. And it is the response of each generation to the changing conditions of life. It is what God has revealed to us and what we have come to know of God. It is the ideas and the ideals, the laws and commandments that make up our religious heritage. It is the experience of Abraham, the legislation of Moses, the wisdom of Solomon, the vision of the prophets, the commentary of the rabbis, the insight of the mystics. It is the questions we ask and the answers we receive when we try to understand what God requires of us. It is the way of self-fulfillment and a design for a perfect world. On page 45, we continue with the Mi Chamocha, who is like you, eternal God, who is like you, glorious in holiness, or inspire, working wonders. The people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath in every generation as a perpetual covenant. It is the sign between me and the people of Israel forever. The Vashamru. On the bottom of page 46, one of my favorite prayers for a Friday night, the Hashkivenu, a prayer that invites us to just take rest as a serious spiritual discipline. I don't think there's a finer religious imperative than to take rest as a spiritual practice. And if you have it, then saying the words to yourself, I think, gives us that mantra, that sense of the rest we're looking for. Grant that we may lie down in peace and rise up again unto life. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with wise counsel and save us for the sake of your name. Be a shield about us, protecting us from hatred and war, from pestilence and sorrow. Curb within us the inclinations to evil and protect us within the embrace of your love. Guard your going out and your coming in unto life and peace from this time forth and forevermore. We praise you, O God, who shelters us and all those who dwell on earth. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham. We come now to the tefillah, the prayer that reminds us of the merits of our ancestors and of those who came before us in our religious heritage. On page 47, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham v'Elohei Sarah v'kol dorotam, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shmo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umosher Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. We praise you, Eternal One, who was the shield of Abraham and the help of Sarah. Eternal is your power, O God. You are mighty to save. In loving kindness, you sustain the living. In the multitude of your mercies, you preserve us all. You uphold the falling and heal the sick, free the captives and keep faith with your children in death as in life. Who is like you, Almighty God, author of life and death, source of salvation? We praise you, for you have implanted within us eternal life. On page 48, when we become aware of your presence, O God, we discover our life's truth in the knowledge that we can worship you in holiness only as we serve each other in love. How much we owe to the labors of others. Day by day, they endure pain and peril for our sake. Time and again, they face the terrors of the unknown for truths that shed light on our way. Numberless gifts and blessings have been laid in our cradles as our birthrights. May we then be just and great-hearted in our dealings with others, sharing the fruits of our common labor, acknowledging that we are but stewards of whatever we possess. Help us to be among those who are willing to sacrifice that others may not hunger, who dare to be bearers of light in the dark, loneliness of stricken lives, who struggle and even bleed for the triumph of righteousness in our world. So shall we be partners in the repair of our world, Tikkun Olam, for that has been our vision and our goal throughout all the ages. Our God and God of ages past, grant that our worship on this Sabbath be acceptable to you. Sanctify us through your commandments, that we may share in the blessings of your Torah. Teach us to be satisfied with the gift of your goodness and gratefully to rejoice in all our blessings. Purify our hearts that we may serve you in truth. Help us to preserve the Sabbath as Israel's heritage from generation to generation, that it may bring rest and joy, peace and comfort to the dwellings of our people, and through it your name may be hallowed in all the earth. We praise you, God, who sanctifies the Sabbath. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, Yisrael
with the sound of such beautiful music echoing in our ears, let's take a moment for our own silent meditation to pray the prayers of our own hearts. How beautiful. We just read a prayer about being grateful to those who provide blessings for us. And one of the blessings that we've had recently is a real engagement with our presence at 15 Newbury Street and the ways in which people can see us and to be noticed by the wider community. One of the ways that we've been doing that is to create some signage for the building. There you go. A sign that people have created for us and will be welcoming to all those who will hopefully notice us as they're walking down Newbury Street. You'll see behind Devon that there is a coloured banner on the door. That hasn't been around actually for quite some time, but instead there's going to be some new signage on those doors that will both advertise our services and Emmanuel's as well. So we're going to have an opportunity to be present in the neighborhood. And we do hope that that will draw people to our services as well. So we want to thank all those people who worked so hard on building this new visibility for our congregation. Let's then think of those perhaps who are not in such joyous states, those who need our prayers of healing. We think of particularly the many thousands who have been devastated by the earthquake in Syria and Turkey. And our hearts go out to all those who are in pain and in suffering, whether it is of the body or of the mind. So for all those we're thinking about who need our prayers of healing, we recite the Mishaberach prayer, the prayer that asks God to protect and help those and keep us in their minds.
May the source
Wonderful. Well, let's examine these 10 commandments as we have called them. You heard in the prayers that I recited earlier that contemporary rabbis very much emphasize the idea of the ongoing nature of God's revelation rather than it all being one event on Mount Sinai. But we have this tradition that as Moses was asking Pharaoh to let the people go, he was saying that in fact, the second part of that sentence, let my people go, that they shall serve me. That's the quote from the book of Exodus. So it wasn't just a question of letting the people come out of slavery to freedom. It was also that the people should gather on the mountain and should worship God on that mountain. And that was where they were going when they left Egypt. So it's that moment of, we call it in theological language, the moment of revelation, when some experience, we don't really know what it was, happened, and that the Torah in traditional language was given. We call it in Hebrew matan Torah, the giving of Torah, and that became the foremost and fundamental teaching of the Jewish people from that moment onwards. And as we heard, Torah then becomes enlarged, becomes changed, interpreted, developed, and never stays still for one moment. But somehow there comes this predominance of these 10, what are called dibrot words, 10 utterances. In fact, the name 10 Commandments is not does not come within the Jewish tradition. Rather, the idea that there are 10 things called commandments actually comes much later in history. In the beginning, for instance, in the Talmud, they're called the Aseret Dibrot, the 10 words or the 10 utterances. So we don't really call them in rabbinic Judaism, we don't call them commandments, but they came to be known as the 10 Commandments. So the question tonight, really, for our discussion sermon, we've had a discussion sermon before when we were in the sanctuary, and now we're going to try a discussion sermon online. But I want to know what you think about these 10 Commandments. Are they the most important parts of effectively Western civilization? Are they fundamental to who we are as a civilization today? Have they always been? Is there an 11th commandment that we should really add, or are these 10 not as relevant as they once were? Just to remind you, I'm sure that you have them somewhere in your memory, but to remind you that the first 5 of them are considered to be commandments that are commanded between God and the individual. So they're kind of theological commandments. They start off with, I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, which, if you think about it, is not really a commandment. It's more of a theological statement, which is why, again, the word commandment doesn't really apply. The second one is, you shall have no other gods beside me, the idea that there is only one God. And that, of course, is the fundamental eternal Jewish value. Devon and I were debating the Jewish values the other day at another forum, and we agreed that this idea that there is one God is definitely kind of one of the most essential Jewish beliefs. The third one is you shall not make any idols or sculptured images. The fourth one is remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And that's one we're celebrating tonight. And then we come to the last 5, and the 5 are considered to be commandments between people rather than between God and us. So the 5th one is honor your father and mother. The 6th one is you shall not murder. And actually, although other traditions may say kill, the Hebrew is definitely to murder. Tirtzach is to murder. And so what we might call, there's a technical term for that, which I've just forgotten, but the idea that there can be legalized killing, let's say in war, or indeed if a state decides to put people to death by trial and capital punishment, that is not the same as tirtzach. That is a different thing. So murder is obviously the kind of thing we think of when we think of one person murdering another who has no authority to do so, and therefore all life is considered sacred. The seventh one is you shall not commit adultery, though that was usually applied to women rather than to men, because men could marry more than one wife. You shall not steal, and that stands by itself, but in the rabbinic tradition, it was often thought of as stealing people rather than things, so no kidnapping. You shall not bear, number 9, you shall not bear false witness, that is, to do justice and not to subvert justice in the courts of law. And number 10, you shall not covet. You shall not be jealous of all the other things that people have. So those are the 10 commandments. And I'm just wondering what people think about them today. Which do you think is important, the most important? And what would you change or adapt if you could do so? If you could be a Moses and do it all again, what would be different? Any thoughts? Let's hear. I think, BK, your hand is up.
Yeah, so first, there were 2 sets of tablets, and there are, in fact, at least 2 sets of commandments in the biblical text, which I find interesting and a lot of people don't realize. But I think the most ridiculous thing about the whole matter is how some people want to make idols of the commandments themselves and post them on buildings of government that has nothing to do with religion. So I just think it's the ultimate irony of people turning the commandments themselves into an idol.
Exactly. It's interesting that Jews, by and large, haven't used the 2 tablets, the symbols of the 2 tablets, as an icon in our synagogues, although we do have them. Other symbols have become more important, like the menorah is more of an important symbol than the 2 tablets. And actually, originally, the 2 tablets were rectangular rather than having a little arch on the top. That's a later addition in medieval, I think, Christian practice, to add that little arch on the top. So it looks like those are the 2 tablets that we're all familiar with, but that's really not the original Jewish way of depicting them. But you're right that there are 2 versions. Obviously, we know there's the version that we're reading in the book of Exodus chapter 20, and then there's a slightly different version in the book of Deuteronomy. And one of the differences is in Exodus it says to remember the Sabbath day, in Deuteronomy it says to observe the Sabbath day. And that led to the idea that, well, there might be 2 ways of celebrating the Sabbath day, and therefore we should have 2 things to represent the Sabbath. That's why we have 2 candles. And indeed, some people have 2 chalot, 2 twisted loaves of bread to represent these 2 sets of commandments. Others, what do you think about the 10 commandments? Jill, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of the do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you. Is I always, maybe that's the 11th commandment, or that supersedes the 10, but that seems to sort of speak to the heart of what the other 10 are getting at.
Nice, yeah. That, of course, was coined by Hillel the sage, who was one of the proto-rabbis, and said, do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. And then in the New Testament, that's twisted into the positive by Jesus, who suggests that what you do unto others is how you should behave. So that is often seen as a summary of the 10, and it's our behavior towards other people in light of the reflection of knowing that this is part of a divine will, that we want to do the right thing and act in the right way. So that could be one summary of the 10. Yeah. Hal, yes.
This may be a little bit of heresy, but you as you have recounted all of the commandments, I feel like I've just heard from a sociologist, and I've just heard from not even anybody of any religious nature, of maybe somebody from of a legal status, of trying to define reasonable human behavior. And and I've had this discussion within myself many times. Are the 10 Commandments really a religious object, or are they some kind of a decree of a group of people who have defined the mores for their group? And maybe it's the evolution of all of this that has turned this into somewhat of a religious icon or a religious set of rules of behavior. But I don't know. It's, I'm a little, I have a lot of trouble, and this is a personal position, a lot of trouble that, God spoke to Moses and he inscribed on all of these stones, all these things. So there's this sense of reality that the 10 Commandments is much more and much less than what is commonly held.
I love that. That's wonderful. Thanks, Hal. That's giving us a really nice interpretation of seeing these as a set of principles or a mission statement or a vision of what life is what's important in life, rather than seeing them as, enactments that we need to follow. And in many ways, I suppose that requires us all to think about, like, what are the 10 most important things to us, and what would we rate as important to think about, and what maybe to pass on to those who are coming in the next generation. Kind of what's our ethical principles that we stand on, that we want to be known, that's our stance in life. So yes, I think that it's an important way to perhaps to see them. That's maybe when the rabbis thought of them as 10 sayings or 10 utterances. That's the kind of thinking they were meaning. Yeah. Gail.
I like the reading you did right at the beginning of the service about the evolution of Torah. And I think it could apply equally to swap in 10 commandments for that. And what it also made me think of is our own U.S. Constitution is often treated almost like the 10 Commandments. And one of our, I think, non-trivial debates with both has to do with what in the Constitution is called originalism or literalism versus something that's more evolutionary. And I think both are important balancing. And within the religious context also, you have the fundamentalist or literalist interpretation, and then the evolution. So anyway, and we live with that every day,
Right.
in both domains, really.
Yeah, very important. And those, I think many of us who would consider ourselves progressive would veer to the side of a progressive revelation, an ongoing unfolding of what we think God wants of us, not a one-time statement that's laid down on stone that we have to follow forever. Exactly. That goes both probably for the Constitution and the 10 Commandments. Yes, Larry.
I pulled it up because I haven't thought about them in a very long time. Although you did read them and give us a little bit of editing with them, or editorial comment. I never thought about them this way, but they're aspirational in many cases. And I don't know, I can only speak for myself. I don't think I've hit all 10 every single day of my life. But when you falter, there's always a way through religion to try to come back to center and try to do better tomorrow. So Yeah, aspirational. That's what I'm throwing into the conversation.
Well, that's very interesting, because actually one of the Sabbath, the fourth commandment, the Sabbath, is actually quite long. There's a lot of words there, and it says, no, sorry, the fifth one, the one that honors your father and mother, says that the consequence of honoring your father and your mother is to live long on the land that God is assigning to you. So there's a consequence that, as an aspiration, that doing these things will in time reap reward. Yeah, so there has that sense of it as well. Yeah, I like that. Leslie, I think you wanted to speak.
I was trying to, and I haven't looked it up right now, but to compare the 10 Commandments to the 7 deadly sins. And they don't always intersect in a way that, the 7 deadly sins aren't thou shalt, the commandments aren't, if you don't do this, you're committing one of the 7 deadly sins. They are different categories. And do the deadly sins have any meaning in Judaism, or is that just a medieval construct of some kind?
Yeah, not really within our tradition. And we do have the curses that come about later in the Book of Numbers, but we don't have the sins in that sense now.
Is it okay to curse people?
To curse people?
Yes. I mean, like if people are just terrible, to put a hex on, like certain people in Congress. I mean, if you could, is it?
There's some great curses in Yiddish if we all want to learn some.
Let's do that. Let's do that. My grandmother used to say it, but I'd say, what does that mean? And she'd say, you don't need to know.
Right. Was there someone else who wants to? Oh, yes, Anita.
I had a very emotional reaction to it. I'm very interested in what everybody is saying, and I've thought about the 10 Commandments on and off through my lifetime. But as you were reading them tonight, I became very sad. And I thought about the fact that what has happened to our world, and maybe we need to remember the 10 Commandments, because they seem to have been forgotten in a great many ways in our world. And we need some reminder, even if we can reinterpret them and work with them, but the world has lost them, or they have been lost to the world at this moment in our culture.
Right. Yeah. Yes, that's certainly a sad testament to where we are now. And perhaps one of the 11th commandments that maybe we are thinking about that our ancients didn't was our stewardship of the planet and our care for the environment. And maybe that could be one that we would think also is important and add to the 10. Of course, as you all probably are aware, the 10 didn't remain 10, that over time, more and more were added. And as we read forward in the book of Exodus and then into the book of Leviticus, we're going to have a whole set of laws and ordinances that will eventually add up in the eyes of the rabbis to 613. And that's considered the number of mitzvot, of commandments in the Torah. That number has been also interpreted and kind of pulled out of the air. So whether we do the 10 or the 613 or do the ones that we think are important is certainly being debated, hotly debated in Judaism for many centuries. And many people have come to their own sense of what the principles and the aspirational aspects of Judaism and the values and the mission of Judaism and of Torah to be. And some of those passages I read earlier reflect on kind of the nature of what we think of as Torah, not just as the 5 books of Moses, not just as maybe the 10 Commandments, but as an ongoing process, an unfolding revelation that we, both as Jews and those who are not Jews, have come to learn about what it is that is important to us as people between each other, and what it is for us as important between ourselves and the God, the divine, the other, that we envisage wants righteousness and justice for this world. So I think we will carry on a little bit of this tomorrow in our Torah study. If anybody wants to join us to look at some of the Hebrew and some of the specifics of these 10 words, these 10 utterances, we will do that tomorrow. And now we will continue with our service. We're actually we're going to play Ani Ma'amin, I believe, which was a statement made by Maimonides about what he believed in the principles of Judaism. Beautiful. And now we turn to the adoration on page 294 as we conclude our service.
Stay there.
Let us adore the ever-living God. We render praise unto you, who spread out the heavens and established the earth. Your glory is revealed in the heavens above.
May all created in your image recognize that we are brothers and sisters, so that one in spirit and one in harmony, we may be forever united before you. Then shall your reign be established on earth, and the word of your ancient prophet be fulfilled. The eternal God will reign forever and ever. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those of our friends and neighbors and members of our community that we have lost, and indeed all those who have tragically lost their lives in this earthquake that we have been reading about in the Syrian and Turkish region. We think of all those who have lost their lives to violence this week in our own country and also in all those countries abroad. And we think of those we name in our hearts tonight, taken from us in recent days, Ira Greenspun, a close friend of Anita Rossian and Rabbi Devin Lerner, and those for whom we are reciting their names for Yahrzeit as a remembrance of their death in times and seasons past. Robert Krauss, cousin of Stephen Grossberg, Maya Lerner, father of Rabbi Devin Lerner, Norma Lubin, mother of Rob Lubin, Charlotte Moskowitz, sister of Dick Milstein, Fred Rubeck, grandfather of Hannah Rubeck, and Hal Wishnow, uncle of Rabbi Devin Lerner. For all those and all we are remembering, we recite the Kaddish Yatom, the memorial Kaddish, which can be found on page 302. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, be'alma divra cherutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachon v'yomechon, chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman karif v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabba mevorach le'olam omei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalau shemei dekudasha b'rechu le'ela min kol birachta v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiron be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. So our final hymn is Come, O Sabbath Day. And Amy, who, as many of you know, is actually in London or traveling back from London, has been singing with Angeline, our two soloists in London this past month. And as you've heard her tonight, singing for us as well.
Shabbat shalom.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat
Nice to
shalom.
see you. Have a good night.
Shabbat shalom. Bye-bye.